In this lesson, you're going to learn about time bands. Time bands are a relatively simple uh, technique to help us identify relatively narrow range zones for cycle highs and cycle lows. It's based on sort of traditional type of cycles, except we don't use fixed length cycles like a lot of traditional cycle enthusiasts do, is that we identify the actual cycles within the market with a very simple technique and then project forward in time. Before we start, is I basically learned this technique, basically the same as I'm presenting it to you from Walt Bressard almost 30 years ago. Walt Bressard was known as the father of financial cycles. He passed away a few years ago. But in the 80s and 90s, he lived in Tucson, Arizona, when I lived in Tucson, Arizona. And we used to get together and do a hike every now and then and talk markets. And it was right about that time when he had published a book called The Power of Oscillator Cycle Combinations. I think that's the title of it. It's long since been out of print. But he also not only helped me learn a little bit more about this kind of cycle analysis, which is very simple. Anybody can do it with any charting software, just about. Also, how to integrate momentum studies with cycles and with other techniques such as Elliott wave or price and pattern, the type of thing I've been teaching you here. So for many years prior to that, I never used momentum cycles, probably for the first 10, 12 years of trading, is I just used Elliott wave, timing, price relationships, that sort of thing. So anyway, I just want to give credit where credit is due. So let's take a look at, this is the dollar daily data. And you can see that I've marked off, so there are really significant highs and lows in this market. There's a little bit of judgment on which ones you mark off. You basically want to know, does this market have a relatively narrow range? In this case, we're going to be projecting for a high from past high to highs. That doesn't have to be so narrow that it's fixed, like every 22 days or something like that, but something fairly narrow where the obvious highs and lows have been made, that we can discover what is the range of time between those highs. Because we're going to first discover the ranges between high to highs, and then we're going to discover the ranges from the low to highs, and we're going to look at where those two ranges overlap. That's where we'll have a high probability time band to complete the next cycle high or cycle low. So it can be useful to us to identify if a market's in a position or reaching a time position to make a reversal. So on this daily data, you can see I've marked off the highs and lows. These little boxes, they don't really mean anything. It's just so we can clearly identify where the highs are, and these are just little swing lines that are entered in the Dynamic Trader program. So we want to know the time range from high to high. So hopefully your software can mark these off. I'm going to mark these off before we continue. And I just want the date and the number of bars from the prior high. I just have a feature that'll do them all at once. Wherever the swing highs are, it'll mark them off. So the markers give the date, and then it gives the number of bars from the prior marker. So since I've just marked off highs, we can see that high to highs have been like a range. There's 32, 38, 24, 32, 23, 24, 37. And this one isn't complete. That's what we're going to do, is project the relatively narrow range time band when the next comparable high should be made. So there is a little bit of judgment involved in which ones to mark off. For instance, how about in here? Why didn't I mark them off? Well, first is I want to see if there's a relatively narrow range, obvious relatively narrow range from high to highs in this case. And because this was a temporary high, but then it went up higher and made what we might call a higher time frame high, I chose that one. And I also, that's the same basic situation as this one, is that these were little sub-cycles within the higher time frame cycle. So this is a reasonably wide range between, let's see what we have here. We have 22 days up to, looks like 38. So that's a fairly wide range of time. It's not going to be real helpful to us It does give us a probable minimum and maximum if this time rhythm continues. And of course, the assumption is always that the time rhythm should continue. But we want to be able to narrow down that range. So first, let me just make a note on the chart of what the high to high is here. There we go. So I'm going to make a little note. High to high was 22 to 38 days. So this is just making a note. So what's the next thing we want to know is we want to know the range of time from the low to the highs. So let's mark off the lows so we can see what those ranges would be. So now the time periods that we have on these markers at the highs anyway is the time from the last marker. In all cases, the last marker was the low. So they have quite a range here. They have one really short one, just 4 trading days. Well, we'll just eliminate the outlier, so to speak. And then out of the rest of the ranges, it looks like the shortest was 15 trading days. And the longest was 27 trading days. So let's enter 15 to 27 trading days of the low to high. So now the objective here is we're going to count from the most recent completed high, 22 to 38 trading days. And then from the most recent low, we're going to count 15 to 27 trading days. And the period of time that is a time band is when those two counts forward overlap with each other. So let me go ahead and do that. Let me count. We have a function in here to count. And by the way, I used to do this on a, didn't mean to do that. I used to do this on an Excel spreadsheet. So if your charting program doesn't have a function like this built in, which it probably doesn't, I've already got the 2238 in here. That's good. Is again, you can set it up on an Excel spreadsheet. I used to do that, and boy, I'm not very good with spreadsheet formulas and all that, but I did figure it out. So, and that was years ago. But if I figured it out, so can you. So the low to high counts from the last low, which was October 28th in this case, was 15 to 27 days. So we want to count forward 15 to 27 trading days. This is just a counting function that we have in DT program. Oh, I got them kind of overlapping there. Let me spread them out just a little bit more. There we go. So what's the overlap? What do we mean by the overlap period? Well, which range of time includes both of these counts and both of these ranges? So it would begin with November 18th and then continue through December 6th. That period of time would include both of these ranges. So I can do that by, again, let's just do something like this. We'll keep those two dates. And we'll know that the next time range or time band for the comparable high to these past highs is going to be between November 18th and December 6th. Now, because these ranges between the high to highs and the low to highs were fairly broad ranges, is this time band is also fairly broad. So it's not going to pinpoint the probable high in this case, but it'll give us at least a minimum time and a maximum time. So up until November 18th, is that more than likely we're not going to complete a high comparable to this. Now that's useful information as of, for instance, the last bar in this chart, that's November 5th, it means we've got another almost 2 weeks before we should make a high comparable to this high. So we should have the market, this market, which is the dollar daily data, should be net bullish for another 2 weeks. That's useful information to have. So, for instance, if we get near a price zone or maybe the momentum gets overbought and makes a reversal prior to November 18th, is that more than likely it's not going to complete a daily high. So, let's add some data on here and see as we approach the 18th, if it continues to advance until that period. Certainly has. That last bar looks like it's November 18th. It is. So now, technically, the high so far is the day before that. So, more than likely, it's going to push a little bit higher. So here we are as of the day after that. That's the November 19th. I just want to make sure. Yeah, it's Friday the 19th. And as of that day, the daily momentum made a bear reversal. So now we're within that time band to complete a cycle high, and the daily momentum made a bear reversal. Now we probably want to look at some other price relationships and that sort of thing. But it was very useful to know at least the minimum time that this advance would probably continue. And then, of course, we know the maximum time, if it continues to advance, that more than likely the high will be complete. So let me add some more data on there. Boy, another strong up day, narrow range day, another up day. So what we know is that we're right in that time band. We're getting almost in the center of it from where a high comparable to these highs should be made. Now, couple of these highs were this one was only a few days. But most of the others were anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, if not more. So that's fairly significant, something we might want to know as if we're trading the dollar. We might even look at this and say, oh, that looks like a 5-wave advance. So we made a 5-wave advance, and as of the last bar in the chart, pretty wide range decline from right in the middle of this time band made a daily momentum, a bear reversal. So we're not going into the details of the trade strategy, but I think you can see how this can be helpful for you. And it's pretty simple, isn't it? Pretty straightforward. We're just adding some more bars on here until we get past the 6th. That bar is on the 6th. So there we go. As of this day, and boy, this can be pretty useful itself, is as of this bar on the chart, is we can say more than likely the dollar has completed a high similar to these highs, comparable to these highs, and so that we would want to be oriented to the short side at this point, and that at least not be going long until we reached a point to where we would then do the same technique, but look for the next probable lows, the time band for the next probable low in the market. So a really useful technique and really simple to do. And sometimes you can just mark off your highs and lows, and you can just eyeball it and say, it's been around 15 to 25 bars in the high to high. So that's a pretty wide range. It gives us a minimum and a maximum. But now let me add in the low to highs and do those counts. And where that overlap is, I might have a more narrow range of time to complete a cycle high or a cycle low, depending on which we're projecting for. I will show you a little feature we have in Dynamic Trader if you happen to have the program, and if you're not familiar yet with the time band function, a feature that is helpful to identify these overlap periods. So in the indicator window, we've opened up what is the time band function. And so what is it? Low to high is 15 to 27. And then, there we go, 27. Then the high to high is the 22 to 38. And then again, this is straight out of how Walt would display it, where he had the time bands within the indicator window. So I've got the cursor on the last low, and I'm projecting a high within a higher time frame bull market. So it's gonna automatically recognize the last high, make the count forward 15 to 38 days. It's going to, and I goofed up there, that would be 1527. High to high was 22. There we go. And I better save that, huh? And it's going to automatically count from the last high, make the counts from the last low. So it's displayed in two different ways. This is the time band right in here, and this has the high to high and the low to high ranges, and then it shows the overlap of those two ranges. So basically, as the market progresses, is that we can see when we've reached the overlap period, and then we can see if the indicator is making any kind of reversal within that overlap period once it's reached. And then the lower left hand, it shows the overlap period, which is November 18th to December 6th. And then this is just the high to highs and the low to high ranges. But the only one that's really important is this overlap period. So it's just another way to display the information, just basically it's displaying it, doing it a little more quicker. Isn't that what computers are for? Do things quicker and more accurately, and displaying it, doing basically the same thing as we just did with these counts and identifying the minimum and maximum probable for that time band. So this whole concept of time bands is really pretty simple, really pretty straightforward. And these time bands are going to be based on the actual recent market activity. So it's not on, something that we read in a book about the dollar index should have a, 26 trading day cycle, high to high or low to low or whatever, is that we actually look at the data and we look to see, is it fairly regular reversals, that sort of thing? And if so, then we can identify the probable time band. Can be quite useful. So before we continue on to the next lesson, the one place I found time bands are not really helpful if it's a really strong impulsive market. If it's a really strong impulsive market, then those cycles don't show up as well. I have done it with just on the momentum cycles, even though the market trend was really strong, you still have momentum cycles. And if you have fairly easily identifiable momentum cycles, you can use those for your highs and lows. And you're basically doing a time band for the actual momentum cycle itself. So I'll let you play around with that and see how useful that can be for you. But we're going to keep it fairly simple here, just with the price cycles from the price data. When we see that it's making fairly well-defined and distinguishable cycle highs and lows, time bands can be really useful.